It does. It's an important part of their work-life balance, and they may have a very stressful job, but this is what keeps them kind of steady and what they enjoy about Colorado life.
Hey, Dr. Chris Googles here with the Health Heroes podcast, and today is exciting because we actually have our first attorney, Matthew, here on our podcast. Matthew with Smith and Weidinger, and Matthew's actually a personal injury attorney. And I'm curious, Matt, why did you decide to become an attorney? And then was there anything that led you down into focusing on personal injury?
Sure, and thanks for having me here today. Good to
bet.
talk to you. Yeah, so I became an attorney because I was always curious about how societies were set up and how people interacted with their government, but I transitioned to personal injury because it has a more intimate component. You really get the opportunity to come into people's lives at a pretty tough time, sometimes one of the darkest moments in their life, and they're very discouraged, they're in pain, and they don't know how to navigate the insurance and legal aspects, and they have insurance adjusters calling them not sure what to say and not to say. And I really appreciate the opportunity to help people through those moments and get them to the other side.
Excellent. And you used to be at a larger firm, and now you guys are in more like a more almost boutique type firm. You probably get a little bit more personal or individual attention. Like, what was it like working at a larger firm, and how is that different from like what you're doing now?
So I will say at the larger firms, I got exposure to all different types of events and fact patterns and coverage issues. And I learned the difference between all the different insurance companies and how some of them behave differently in a claim setting than the others, and different strategies that work or don't work with them. But I prefer the smaller environment now because I have more time to spend directly with my clients. I have more time to talk with them about their story and focus on their journey and connect with them at a more personal level. And that enables me to then translate that into the courtroom and tell a more powerful story there because I know them better.
Excellent. It's interesting, and I bet most people that go to see providers don't realize this. You don't really learn anything about the personal injury world because it's a specific area of healthcare because people get injured, and then they, there's and they need care. But on the medical legal side, as a healthcare provider, you're not really trained in that out of school. And so if something that people decide to get into, there's a bit of a learning curve to really understand how that works. And so what is something that you wish more healthcare providers understood or better understood about how personal injury works in relation to treating patients or the healthcare aspect when people are hurt?
Sure. So first I would say I wish that more people were aware of providers and the average person medical payments coverage, which is a no-fault coverage. You know that it can be applied to your auto policy. In fact, your carrier is required to offer it to you in Colorado. And a lot of people reject it because it seems like kind of a small, inconsequential coverage. It's usually $5,000 as a base, but that can really help you out after an injury event because it could help you with an ambulance ride cost or a deductible at the ER urgent care, or it could help you get a significant amount of a regular ongoing chiropractic treatment, massage therapy, physical therapy, care right off the bat and kind of absorb the financial impact because people, as you know, are missing work after an accident, and there's a lot of other financial damage too. So I wish that more people are aware that you can bill medical payments coverage as sort of a replacement or substitute for like a health insurance, and it enables the providers to get paid for their services and the patients to get care.
So for the layperson that may not have any idea what that means, it's like when you get car insurance, you can get coverage that will cover immediate medical bills based on if you have injuries from like a crash or something like that.
That's a great way to explain it. Yeah.
Yep. And like you said, a lot of people, and like I did this especially in my youth, and even before I really did personal injury, I would just say, hey, give me the cheapest amount possible, whatever. Like that's all I was thinking about. But people don't understand how, I think how economically inexpensive it is to get a lot of coverage, right? But someone may think, but I have health insurance. Why do I need medical coverage through my car insurance? And I'm a great driver. I don't cause crashes. If someone hits me, it's going to be their fault likely. So why would I potentially still need that? I got health insurance. I'm a great driver.
Yeah, but you can't control the decisions other people make, right? So you can be pretty defensive, but you can be traveling through an intersection on a green light and you can't control, and you can't always anticipate somebody coming through distracted on a red or a drunk driver or something like that. So, and even if you have health insurance, there's a lot of things health insurance doesn't cover or will limit you on. Health insurance might say you can't have certain PT sessions longer than X number of minutes, or you can't do PT and chiro on the same day, or they won't cover some of the newer technologies and equipment that providers are using that you want to have access to accelerate your recovery.
Yeah, or even like some of the new treatments like regenerative medicine and things like that. And also a lot of providers, a lot of times people get injured. Some doctors may treat them with a legal agreement saying, hey, we'll treat you, but when your case settles, we get paid. But a lot of providers don't do that. So it allows them to go and get treatment right away without worrying about medical bills. And pretty much any provider will accept that medical payments coverage, right?
Yeah, I would think so.
And the other thing is, can we break down just the different, if someone gets in a crash, I think one thing that I see is sometimes patients don't get treatment right away because they're concerned, like, how am I going to pay these bills? I know I'm hurt. I do this. I can't afford a bunch of extra expenses right now. But kind of walk through like the different types of coverage people can get and kind of how that works if someone's in a crash.
Sure. So if you are in a crash and you're worried about the financial consequences and whether or not you can treat, that's why it can be helpful to reach out to an attorney, even for an initial consultation, to understand your rights and what options that you have. So if you have medical payments coverage, that's a great way to pursue treatment. If you have health insurance, that is a way to pursue treatment and can still be better than certainly no treatment and can enable you to go to the ER, urgent care, and get some imaging and things of that nature. But also there are other funding avenues that might be available to you. There are companies that will fund care for you if you have a valid personal injury claim too. And a lot of providers will be willing to work with you if they know that you will get a settlement because an attorney has reviewed the case and verified that the at-fault party has insurance and will be offering you a settlement down the road, and there's a good basis to provide you with some treatment and wait to get reimbursed out of the settlement. So there are some different options. It does depend on the case and the coverages, but we never want people to shy away from getting treatment when they're in pain. They want to get better, they want to get treatment, and they're worried about the consequences. So definitely see what options you have, I think.
Absolutely. And when we started seeing patients that were involved in car crashes, we would see a lot of times where someone had pretty significant injuries. And sometimes it'd be a hit and run, phantom driver, or the person that hit them, someone else was liable, but they had really minimal coverage. I think what's the minimum, 25,000 bodily injury. And if you go to the hospital in an ambulance, even if they don't do anything, that's gone. And people like were stuck with stuff. So then there's also like the uninsured or the underinsured. So you can get insurance that, hey, just in case someone causes a crash and they don't have good coverage, that's extra you can get to cover bills too. I know when I started out, I had the bare minimum and I called and I got the absolute most they would give me. It cost me about $20 more a month. And so.
Yeah, and it obviously scales with more coverage, but it's just to get at least a little bit of uninsured motorist coverage can really protect you. And a lot of insurers don't tell people that in Colorado, uninsured motorist coverage helps you if you're hit by someone with no insurance, but it also helps you if you're hit by someone with not enough insurance. So it adds on. If you're hit by someone with state minimum, like you said, and you go to the ER, that coverage is already kind of used up. But then if you have your own uninsured motorist coverage, it can stack on top of the at-fault parties coverage, thereby increasing your recovery, maybe doubling it. But see, there are things you can do on your own policy to put yourself in a better defensive or preventative position.
Absolutely. And even on the other side, to protect yourself, because you may think you're an excellent driver, but maybe there's bad weather, something happens, something that you can't control, and you still cause a crash or you could be liable. you also want to make sure there's coverage to cover yourself too. So you have that as well.
Yeah, you definitely do. We actually get calls fairly frequently. People ask if I gave my car or keys to someone else and they caused a crash, am I liable? And yes, you can be liable if you gave them permission to drive. So just got to protect yourself with your bodily injury liability limits as well.
Perfect. Now, do you have any like case or story or a favorite one of some a person that you represented that maybe came in, it didn't look like they didn't know if they were going to have a good outcome, and that you were really able to help and make a big difference for them?
So normally when people come to us, they've been offered $2,000 to $3,000 from the insurance company. That's what the insurance parlance is called a nuisance offer. It's basically the minimum amount that they figure that's worth to pay anyone to settle their claim. It's worth it to the insurance company to just close it out with no documentation, no proof of injuries. They figure, let's just close the books. And a lot of people do take that offer. They might have health insurance. They figure, oh, at least this will cover my deductible.
Mm-hmm.
I'm probably not going to be that bad. This will probably go away in a few days. The ER told them they're not dying, but they're still in pain, and they just decide, well, this will help me a little bit in the short term. And they take the money. But a lot of people come to us asking, is that a fair offer? And if you get to talking with them and they have their whiplash injuries, they have neck pain and back pain, it's disrupting their sleep. So they're not getting good sleep. They're not performing at work well. And they're just not enjoying their daily life. They're not doing their recreational things. Maybe they stopped going to the gym. That is, a massive disruption. And if they don't get the treatment because they don't feel like they can afford it, then these injuries are not going to get better. I mean, you know better than anyone, the scar tissue can set in, and it can take even longer to heal. And so we have really appreciated the opportunity to get involved and explain the coverage options, reassure people there is a path to getting treatment, and you can talk to people like yourself who will really unpack all the injuries and educate people on their injuries and help them get better.
Perfect. So in your opinion, from a legal standpoint, if someone is in a crash and they're injured, what are some things that they could do or not do, or should not do, let's say in that first 24, 48 hours, or in that first week, that could really make a difference in their case long term?
So don't wait to get checked out medically. If you notice anything, any new pains or worsening pains, anything different in your body that doesn't feel right, or cognitively, if you feel brain fog, any of those things, go get checked out medically so that things don't get worse. And from the legal side, then there's documentation that you are experiencing those symptoms. So a lot of people, I think, wait a while and then they prolong their own recovery, and it puts the claim in an immediately tougher position.
So patients on the interstate, it's there's like stop and go traffic, and boom, they get rear-ended. Like, what should they do? Like, what are kind of the steps like a person, in your opinion, like should do from the moment that crash happens to where they're kind of on the path of going through recovery?
Sure, and it is tough to be in. I've been in that position myself, and you're just mind blanks. You're in shock that actually happened to you. But definitely check out yourself, anyone else in the vehicle, anyone else in any other vehicles. If anybody is injured or stunned or at all, I think it's always good to call 911 to get some first responders out there, because 911 will help you triage whether or not it needs to be ambulance and fire or just police. Always good to have police at the scene, because they will document the legal aspects of this so that you don't have to worry about trying to be the only witness factually to what happened.
Yeah, because legally, if you're in a crash, even if police don't come, you are required to file a report, correct?
So you can file a report online. It's called a counter report, but it is much better if the officer provides a crash report, because then the officer is presumptively the neutral party in this scenario, and a person that's trained to respond to collisions and trained in traffic law. And if they determine the other person who hit you is fault, that insulates you legally from the other driver trying to kind of weasel out of it later. If they underreport their speed later, because if there's only your version of events filing online, then that's all that there is, right? But if you have the officer documenting the person who hit you was going 65, not 25, as they tried to tell their insurance company
Yep.
later.
Yeah. And I would say, so first, like, make sure you're safe. There's no immediate danger in
Yep.
that. And I would advise people, well, make sure you get the other person's information. I just tell them, you got your phone, take a photo of their
Yep.
driver's license, their license plate. If they have their insurance, make sure you swap that because you don't know.
Yeah.
If anyone's being funny about that, that's kind of gets your attention.
Not a good sign. Not a good sign.
Right away. And then definitely, I think, get checked out, because even, a lot of people don't have or notice things right away. They're stressed out. They have adrenaline. A lot of times, it's not till 2 or 3 days later where they get sore injuries. And some injuries you don't notice; they can take a little bit longer to creep up. So I would tell everyone, you want everything documented. You may think you're fine. That's either way. Go get checked out. Get someone that's really going to do detailed work. That way, anything that comes up, it's documented, and like what is there right after the crash.
Yeah, absolutely. Like you said, when you're in shock and the adrenaline's flowing through your system, you're not really going to be fully aware of things. But then you get home, your body starts to like calm down from all that, and then you notice the next day or two and wake up extremely sore, can't turn your neck. You hear that all the time, I'm sure.
Now, I see this once in a while, or where someone has been in a crash. A lot of times it's someone I know, and it's been a more severe crash, and I've asked, oh, if you talk to a lawyer about this, and I think there's a misconception about like, oh no, I don't want to sue anyone, and I'm like, it's not about that. It's about, to me, the lawyers hit the easy button, so you could just focus on getting healed, getting your stuff handled, and they kind of make that easy for you. So can you talk about that misconception of, why do I need a lawyer? I don't want to sue someone or whatever. To me, like, most very few cases ever end up going to court, but what does a lawyer do that maybe people have a misconception about how a lawyer helps them in their role beyond just end up going to court or suing someone?
Sure, and you're right. So most cases that's not even necessary. So most cases statistically settle while they are just insurance claims. So statistically, most of the time, the at-fault driver is not actually personally sued because their insurance company steps in and makes a settlement offer. There are some cases that do eventually go to litigation and go to trial, but it's a pretty small percentage, and you don't have to assume that will happen in your case. Your lawyer should be letting you know far afield of when that might even be coming up. So really what the attorney can do in the beginning to help you is help have those initial conversations with the insurance adjuster, explain your injuries and treatment so you don't have to worry about what to say or what not to say to them.
Are you saying that insurance company won't always do what's in your best interest?
No, they so a lot of people have good experiences and really love their insurance agent, right? So that they work with on a regular basis to renew their policies. But the agents are part of kind of the sales and customer service portion of the company, where the claims department has a very different objective. The claims department's job is to really scrutinize the monetary claims and control the value and the payout of the claims. They are risk managers. Their job is to limit the risk to the company. They're not necessarily concerned with what's in your best interest, and especially the insurance for the other parties, not at all concerned with you, right? Because they're not even your insurance company.
Yeah, and it's really wild, because you could have someone get in a crash and they have, let's say, MedPay with an insurance company, and the person that was at fault has the exact same insurance company. And they're like, well, my MedPay, they handled everything, they're really nice and did everything. And then as soon as that is gone, and then it goes to the at-fault party's insurance, even though it's the same company, oh, we don't believe this treatment's medical necessity, we don't believe it's related to the crash, and patients are sometimes confused. They think, well, no, the other person's insurance, they're at fault, they're gonna take care of me, and they'll do whatever, but that's not necessarily how it goes a lot of times. Another thing, I've seen this happen, and I have some good friends that have done this, and it makes me cringe, where they're in a crash, they're injured, and I said, have you talked to a lawyer? And they said, yeah, I got a buddy that's a lawyer. And I said, well, do they specialize in personal injury? No, but they can handle it, right? And I'm just like, why is that a problem? And as someone that really does personal injury, just what is your knowledge, or why is that important? You go to someone that really does personal injury at a high level versus just someone that has a law degree and they really don't do personal injury. Maybe they dabble every now and then.
Sure. So just like if you have a heart problem, you wouldn't want to go to a foot doctor. The law is sufficiently complex, I think, that you should make sure and hire a specialist for the area where you have a problem. I am not a family lawyer, so I will not advise people on family law considerations. So, and people don't realize that beyond the negligence law with personal injury, there's a lot of medical you have to understand, medical terminology. The personal injury lawyers have to know it better than the claims adjusters in order to effectively advocate for you.
I've met some lawyers that are young out of school, and the one advice I always give them is like, I would really learn the injuries and the science at a high level, because you'll be able to serve your patients so much more.
Absolutely.
And you're going to know what things, you're going to be able to understand when someone's injured, how that could impact them, how it could impact them in the future. And you're going to be able to understand the quality of providers you're working with too in documentation. So that's one thing I would say. Lawyers have to have an advanced, or to a certain degree, a much bigger knowledge in injuries and the science and health and just health in general than someone that doesn't deal with all of that.
Yeah, I'd agree with that completely.
Perfect. Now, I kind of alluded to this earlier. Can you think of a specific story that kind of reiterates to you kind of why you do what you do, like of a person's life that was just really impacted by the work you guys do?
Sure. So we represented a family that called after they were on their way to a camping trip, and they had barely gotten out of town when they were hit by a very distracted driver at a high rate of speed. And of course, their camping trip was completely destroyed. But worse than that, they had the kids in the car. The kids had some visible injuries, so the parents were terrified. Everybody was pretty significantly injured, but the family tried to triage it, and they went to the ER, and they followed up and went home, and they planned out some follow-up medical care, and the insurance companies came to them, and I think they were initially maybe not sure if they were going to need an attorney or want an attorney, and a lot of people have maybe some concerns about, is an attorney going to have value added to my case, or are they just going to take a chunk of the settlement? But the injuries didn't resolve, and that they brought us on board and trusted us to help them out. And we stayed with their cases and helped them explain their injuries to specialists and followed their recovery for a year or two until they were fully recovered, fortunately, and at least to a point where they felt comfortable settling their cases. But even with that, we wanted to make sure and map out, these are the things they're still struggling with, and these are the things the family hasn't fully regained, and the trauma of everything, right? So that doesn't just disappear overnight. So, but we got them, I think, extremely good outcomes. We're very proud of what we did for the family, and I think the family was very grateful. And those are the types of stories that really help, because I can still remember what it was like when they first came to us, and how everything was still kind of very fresh in their minds, and the trauma, it was extremely distracting. You can't set that down mentally after a major crash.
So people sometimes think, well, I have these medical bills, or I have property damage. But when you look at like how settlements are evaluated, like what are the different economic buckets that settlements come from, and what kind of things are looked at that someone may get reimbursed for based on what they go through after a crash?
Sure. So the primary payer in a situation like that, the first bucket, first in line, is going to be the at-fault party's insurance, and any umbrella coverage that they might have, which is not common. Most people that hit you are not out there with umbrella coverages, which is why it's good to have those no-fault coverages that backstop that, because those would be secondary. So any coverage that you might have if you actually live with any resident relatives that have different auto insurance and also have uninsured motorist coverage. That can often apply and backstop and be kind of a third in line policy for people. And then your medical payments coverage, whatever that is, helps to eat up what you owe, right? Because there's obviously you get a settlement, but then the question of how much the settlement flows into your pocket can be affected by how much you still owe in medical. So where we talked about medical payments coverage on your own car insurance policy can be super helpful in making the numbers work out in your favor.
But when you're looking at the value of a case, there's different things that help determine what the value could be. So one, you have like the actual medical bills, right? Or you could have loss of income because of injuries. But then there's also like pain and suffering, right? Some patients are like, I think I always try to tell patients to keep a diary because a lot of times these things can take years to wrap up and they forget what it was like in detail. But the fact that, how can I leave work to go to these treatments? I need to work. It costs me, 2 hours of work, or 3 hours of work every single week if I go follow the doctor's recommendations. And by the way, like I have all this mental, emotional stress because now I'm dealing with all this stuff. Like, how is that all looked at when everything is all said and done?
Yeah, so as you said, documentation is really important because the parties we're dealing with, whether it's the insurance claims adjuster or defense attorney or the courts, documentation is always helpful. And documentation takes time, and going to appointments take time. But if you make it a priority, what we have seen anecdotally, I can't say this medically, you could speak to the medical aspect of it, but just statistically, anecdotally, we see clients resolve so much faster if they're compliant with the treatment plan, especially up front. When your doctor tells you we're going to need to see you 2, maybe 3 times a week, and you need to commit to this, and you need to follow through with your home exercises as much as you can, and adjust your lifestyle accordingly. And the people that do that and take that really seriously, that do really accelerate the recovery. And then that minimizes the disruption. So it's a little bit of front end disruption, but you can be compensated for it. It's part of your pain and suffering, that disruption, the lost enjoyment of life, because you took on this other job as like a professional patient. It feels like you're running around all over town.
So when you say pain and suffering, what does that mean to someone that doesn't do this every day? Like, what is all included in pain and suffering?
So in pain and suffering is very unique, but it's impacted by the types of injuries you have, not just physical, but cognitive or psychological or emotional injuries.
A big one is people that get in a crash. A lot of times they have a lot of anxiety driving, and a lot of times they don't realize it. I know my wife was rear-ended, and like for the first few years, every time if we were within 100 meters of someone, it was just reactive and our heart would go, but it was stressful, right? And so a lot of people don't realize those kind of things are considered.
Yeah. And some people like going on, drives. They want to go out to the mountains for the weekend, but that doesn't sound quite so fun when you've been in a crash recently and you don't enjoy driving as much. Then there's a thing called hypervigilance that we see a lot of our clients struggle with afterwards, where they're just very alert, but to an anxious, not pleasant degree. On the roads, always looking out, any sort of sudden movement or irresponsible behavior, lane, swerving and things. They're always on alert and white knuckle driving kind of, and that's a psychological consequence.
Or they may get like some post-traumatic stress, they get nightmares and things like that. But that's all that people have to they need to keep a diary, because that stuff's all looked at too.
Yeah.
Right. And then too, like there's future needs, like people, a certain percent of people never fully recover. Statistically, about half people that have injuries in a car crash never recover 100%, and it may still impact them in the future. But that needs to be documented too, because that can be considered in a settlement, because they may need ongoing care and things like that to keep things at bay.
Yeah, and that can be part of your settlement, and it really should be something that you think about carefully, because I'm sure you've had patients that have said this, and I have clients that have said, I think I'm better, I want to settle my case. I say, wait, so what about your gym routine? Like, have you gotten back to where you were before or close? They said, I haven't even started going to the gym again. It's like, okay, well then how do we know you can still handle this, and your strength and endurance is back to where it was, or as good as you want it to be, right? So.
Yeah, and I think, providers understanding how, when you're asking a patient how it impacts their life, and you're really being detailed enough to know, well, maybe they can go for hikes, but before they would hike 14ers and they'd carry a heavy pack, and now they can go 1 or 2 miles or 3 miles, and that's about it. So really having that documented, so you know to the degree it impacts, and every person's different. What they can do and not do. It's not just a physical thing. A lot of times that plays into their mental, emotional health too. Especially if you take people that are in Colorado, they're outdoor people, they like to exercise. If you take that away, a lot of times that has huge psychological impacts on people.
It does. It's an important part of their work-life balance, and they may have a very stressful job, but this is what keeps them kind of steady and what they enjoy about Colorado life, like you said. So.
All right. So give me threes. Absolutely do this. Absolutely do not do this if you're in a crash.
Okay. So if you've been in a crash, absolutely get information on the other driver or bring police to the scene to get that information, since this is the other person's driver's license and insurance card. Absolutely go get checked out if you have any new or different pains or symptoms. And absolutely don't tell the insurance company that you're doing okay. Famously, in their initial calls with the claims adjuster, they'll say, "Is everybody doing okay now?" It'll seem very conversational, but they always kind of ask you that. And if, like you said, the adrenaline's kind of fading from your system, you might not be fully aware of your injuries. And most people that are hit are not doctors, right? So like, you're not medically able to say, "I am okay and I have no injuries," but they'll try to get you on recording saying, "I'm okay," so they can use that against you later to kind of minimize your claim.
I've literally seen insurance companies call a patient and be like, "Hey, Matt, how's it going today?" "Oh, it's going all right. It's good. I'm okay. How you doing?" "I'm okay." Like, patient says they're okay.
Yep.
Well, you meant like you're doing fine today, but it doesn't mean you're not injury or pain-free or whatever, but things can be taken out of context or misrepresented.
Yeah, and listen, I'm not saying claims adjusters are all bad people, but I will say that a claims adjuster does not get promoted at the company by giving the company's money away. So you got to understand their role.
I can tell you my own experience. I record the calls when I do them, but I've had claims adjusters say, "Well, what do you know? You got your degree over a weekend and you don't know anything." Or I've seen them change diagnosis codes. They say, "Well, this is all we're covering for a sprain strain." I said, "Well, that's great. That's not what we diagnosed. That was not the injuries. Could I talk to the medical doctor on staff that evaluated the patients and diagnosed them with sprain strain? Because that wasn't my diagnosis." And so we catch them on things like that all the time, trying to belittle or minimize or misconstrue what's actually going on with patients. And a lot of times, and I've had patients come in, I've had employees that were claims adjusters for me, and they've told me, like, honestly, this is what we're told to do. Like, I really had no idea what was going on with patients. I really didn't understand, but our job was to keep things at a certain level, and if we only had so much in reserves, that's what we were trying to keep the payments at. So there's probably a couple of good ones out there.
No, you have to understand the system is designed to kind of work against you. There's been some books written about kind of the insurance claims industry and how their goal is to minimize the average claim. They want to collect large premiums, pay out small claims.
Excellent. I guess a last question is, what are some questions people should ask, or what should people look into when they're trying to find an attorney? And who would be an ideal or great client for you guys, and why should someone consider having you represent them maybe versus somebody else?
Sure. So you talked about this earlier. I think it's important, if you're considering hiring somebody, ask them about their experience in personal injury, and specifically what they know. How do they have experience with the insurance companies involved in your claim? What do they know about them? How much experience do they have working up a claim? What do they know about the medical diagnoses you've received? If you have significant ligament damage, how much do they understand that? Or a concussion or whatnot. So those are things you should definitely ask. And don't feel shy about asking them about their fee percentage. That's something that they should be really transparent about, and how they go about situations where, if you're worried about the numbers, you can ask them about that. What happens if the coverage isn't high enough? What do you guys do? Do you ever reduce fees? And they should be willing to have those conversations with you. And that's something that we always try to be really adaptable on. And so we want to make sure that the fees always feel very fair to the clients. We're a word of mouth operation. We get a lot of referrals from friends and family of former clients because I think they know that we'll deal with them ethically and authentically.
So how does someone get a hold of you guys? How does someone find you?
So they can reach out to us by phone or text us 720-996-2600. They can also jump online or message us on our social media pages. Our website is swlaw.co.
Perfect. Well, thanks for being on the show.
Thanks for having me, doctor. I appreciate it.
Our first personal injury attorney.